Both Rico Dowdle and Pat Jones II are coming off of career years in Dallas and Minnesota, respectively. Can they keep up the momentum in Carolina? We'll talk about it right here on Locked On Panthers.
You are Locked On Panthers, your daily Carolina Panthers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, as always, Julian Council, talking Carolina Panthers with you every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and yes, of course, Friday, your team every day. That's our motto here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Thanks for watching the show right here on YouTube and listening wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Be sure to follow me, Julian Council, over on Twitter and Blue Sky at Julian Council, where here on Friday, I'm answering your weekly Friday mailbag questions. All you got to do is either at me or DM me your questions over on Twitter at Julian Council or at me over on Blue Sky, also at Julian Council, to be a part of the weekly Friday mailbag right here on Locked On Panthers. And today on Locked On Panthers, let's go back and look at a pair of free agency moves Panthers made this offseason. Pat Jones, the second, coming over from Minnesota, the edge rusher, and then Rico Dowdle, the North Carolina native, coming over from Dallas to come in to this running back room alongside Chuba Hubbard. Had a career year last year. Want to talk about both of those guys in the next 2 days. I actually want to have a few guests from around the network here on Locked On to talk about some of the free agent additions. Going to talk about Turk Wharton, Trevon Merrick, even talk a little bit about Hunter Renfrow on the show tomorrow, and had a big Rams piece I wanted to do of our old friend Jordan Rodriguez, and she's not available. So I do want to find a way maybe next month to get Jordan on to talk all about that. But right now we're here in May and there's not a ton going on. So always trying to find a way to bring some people on to entertain you guys and break down the Panthers, get some other perspective. So let's go ahead and do that. A little bit of a free agency look back the next couple of days. We'll start off though with Marcus Mosher of Locked On Cowboys and get his perspective on Rico Dowdle and why he's not a Cowboy. So that coming up right now on Locked On Panthers. All right, back here on Locked On Panthers, and as promised, Marcus Mosher, he is one of the hosts of the Locked On Cowboys podcast. Check him out on social at Marcus_Mosher. That's Mosher for all of our podcast listeners. Marcus, how you doing, man?
Doing fantastic. It's kind of the boring time of the NFL season. We like it because it gets to slow down a little bit, but I'm excited to talk about some Rico today.
Yeah, and we're not quite there. We'll be in off-season mode coming up in a couple of weeks. But yeah, things are slowing down and still trying to find some things to talk about. But I was thinking about going back and looking at some of the free agency additions that the Panthers have made, as they had a pretty big defensive overhaul, but offensively didn't do that much. But one of the big moves they made was signing Rico Dowdle. And when that happened, my first thought was like, how is he not still in Dallas, knowing how much Jerry likes to run the football and how he had a career year last year? So please, like, enlighten me. Why is he not a Dallas Cowboy anymore? What happened there?
Well, I don't think there's one big reason why he's not a Cowboy. I think there's a bunch of little reasons. And honestly, none of them are his fault. Number one, his agent, David Cantor, I don't think has the best working relationship with the Dallas Cowboys right now. And a lot of his guys just left the Cowboys team. So I think that's part of it.
Okay.
They go with a new scheme with Brian Schottenheimer, which is going to be more gap stuff, more man stuff, where Rico Dowdle is a really good zone runner. And then I think it's just they wanted to get more splash plays. And I think Rico's a really good player, but I don't know if he's a guy that you bring in to get you the 40, 50-yard plays. He didn't have them last year, but it doesn't take away that he had an awesome, awesome season in Dallas.
What was the reaction around the Cowboys organization, even like the fans, when they didn't bring him back? Were people mad, happy, and different?
Well, I don't think Cowboy fans were upset that Rico left. I think they felt like he did a good job filling in and being a spot starter. I think Cowboy fans had a hard time getting behind, hey, Miles Sanders, who the Panthers clearly didn't want last year, and Javonte Williams, who the Broncos clearly didn't want, got more money than Rico Dowdle. I think that's what Cowboy fans were having a hard time dealing with. I know a lot of Dallas, fans out there thought, hey, they're going to draft the running back, early in the draft. It doesn't matter. They're going to upgrade from Rico. They wait until the 5th round to draft Jaden Blue. They grabbed Phil Maffa in the 7th round from Clemson. I think we could have a debate if the Cowboys got worse than their backfield this year.
Yeah, because you think about it right now, like I've always been big Javonte Williams fan. Like I'm a North Carolina fan, so like obviously going to always root for Javonte. He's not been the same since he tore his ACL a couple of years back. Miles Sanders was someone who Carolina did want to bring back, but it had to be at the right price. With Shai Tuttle, who struggled for them as a starting defensive tackle, they were able to get a pay cut there. They want to do the same thing with Miles Sanders, who clearly was not willing to do that. I know he had some comments there in Dallas where he wanted to throw shade at Carolina, but decided to take the high road there. It seems like from Carolina's perspective, at least as far as getting a number 2 back behind Chuba Hubbard, that they have absolutely upgraded. And I know you're a fan of Chuba. How do you see Rico Dowdle potentially like fitting in a backfield with Chuba Hubbard in Carolina this upcoming season?
I think he's an awesome backup. In fact, I think he's one of the best backups in the league right now. I was going to call him, 1-2 punch, but it really feels like Carolina wants Hubbard to be the featured guy. And Dowdle's going to be the primary backup. In fantasy world, we call that the handcuff, right? And I think Rico's a really good handcuff because what he does really well, he's a between the tackles runner that is incredibly efficient. If you look at success rate, which is one of the best determining factors for how good a running back is, Rico Dowdle was like top 7 in success rate. And if you look at the numbers, only when Rico became the starter in Dallas last year, which we should do a whole pod sometime on what happened with the running back situation last year. But
took way Rico Dowdle was like, to get to that point.
It's ridiculous. He's like top 5 in success rate, and his success numbers were better than Saquon Barkley and some of these other running backs. Now, the difference between Barkley and Rico, I mean, there's a lot, but is that Dowdle doesn't hit the home runs. But what Dowdle does really well is 4 yards, 5 yards, 4 yards. It's just constantly getting you ahead of the chains, getting what's blocked and a little bit more. He's really good at absorbing contact. And when you have a backup in the game, you just want them to get what's blocked in a little bit more. Rico can do that in spades. Like, he is a fantastic fit in this offense.
Yeah, and Chuba last year was a guy, he's not necessarily the biggest home run hitter, but he would break some of those 20, 25-yard runs. And if you, as you mentioned, you have a backup who's going in there, he's getting those 4 to 5 yard carries. And what you're trying to avoid really is negative plays. And that's kind of what success rate is out there trying to measure. Can you avoid those negative plays? Can you stay on schedule? Like, that is what Rico Dowdle is able to do. I am curious your thoughts here, Marcus, because I'm looking at this backfield. These are 2 guys coming off of career years. I think Chuba Hubbard is a better player than Rico Dowdle. Certainly has been paid like that by the Panthers, getting that $33 million extension last November, but they're both coming off 1,000-yard rushing seasons. Dave Canales talked about he wanted to be stubborn about running the football. When he got here, they got the entire offensive line coming back from last year. I mean, are we looking at maybe like a top 5 backfield in the NFL? As like a 1-2 punch?
Maybe. What was funny is when I was doing these success rate charts all year long, kind of showing where Rico was at. And every time
Chuba
that I posted it, Chuba was up there. And he was like, there was a long stretch where he was number 1 in the NFL. And it's like, how can this be? This running back on a not very good offense on a not very good team. How could he be so good? And I think as the season went on, people started to recognize, like, hey, Chuba Hubbard's a pretty good running back. And maybe this offensive line isn't as bad as what we maybe anticipated. So it's never going to be the sexiest backfield because, I'm sorry, Chuba Hubbard and Rico Dowdle is not the sexiest running back tandem. But could it be one of the league's most effective? Absolutely.
And that's what's just so crazy to me when you look at it, because like those names, they don't pop out, but the production, especially from Chuba last year and really the last year and a half, once he took over for Miles Sanders, who came in, was injured, really struggled, and became the number 1 back in Carolina. I mean, he's been a dude for them. And Rico coming off that season last year, I'm excited to see what they can do. Just one last thing, Rico, as far as a pass catcher, like that's something I think Carolina needs out of a running back that they were hoping to get out of Jonathan Brooks. He's going to miss the entirety of this upcoming season because of that ACL tear. He's still trying to recover. Chuba improved in that area, but not really what he's going to do. Trevor Etienne could do that for them. Does Rico bring that at all as far as a third down pass catcher out of the backfield?
A little bit. I thought he got better as the season went on. I thought he became more comfortable in that role. We saw him make some huge plays early in the season, like a play to help beat Pittsburgh on Sunday Night Football. I wouldn't call that his strength.
Yeah.
But it's not a weakness either. Like, you can run any route that you want to run with him. The dump offs, Texas routes, the screens. He can do all that. It's just not his forte. I actually look for ETN to maybe gobble up some of those snaps, but for Rico to be the 1B to Chuba Hubbard's 1A.
Yeah, I like it. The maybe not the sexiest backfield in the NFL, but potentially one of the most effective with Chuba Hubbard and now Rico Dowdle coming over from Dallas. He's Marcus Mosher from Locked On Cowboys. Check him out on YouTube, wherever you listen to your podcast. Follow him over on social media at Marcus_Mosher. Does a great job covering the Dallas Cowboys, where there is never a dull moment there in Dallas. Appreciate you as always, Marcus.
Of course.
All right, take a quick pause. Come back here. We'll talk about Pat Jones and what he's providing to Carolina this upcoming season in just a moment on Locked On Panthers. As a small business owner, your work doesn't end when the clock hits 5. Your business is always on your mind, which means when it's time to hire, you need a partner that works just as hard as you do. That's where LinkedIn Jobs comes in. When you clock out, LinkedIn clocks in. LinkedIn makes it easy to post your job for free, share it with your network, and get qualified candidates all in one place. LinkedIn's new feature can help you write job descriptions and quickly get your job in front of the right people with deep candidate insights. And here's a pro tip. Add the hashtag hiring frame to your profile picture to double your reach of qualified candidates. No wonder 72% of small businesses say LinkedIn helps them find quality hires. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right, back here on Locked On Panthers, as promised, Luke Braun. He is the host of Locked On Vikings, of course, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Check him out on YouTube, wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Here to break down Pat Jones II. Luke, how you doing, man? As we were post-schedule release and right there in that part of where we're waiting for OTAs, we're waiting for the little summer break and really have football back here full time.
Yeah, it's probably the single point in the calendar year where the Vikings are least likely to harm me. So I'm doing great.
All right, well, that's always a good thing heading into Memorial Day weekend. So we were talking about having you come on here to talk about Pat Jones and looking back at some of the moves the Panthers made back in March, and now that we know what the roster is post NFL draft. And you had sent me something that you had wrote, and the headline was, "Where the hell did Pat Jones II come from?" So I'll ask you the question that you asked. Where the hell did Pat Jones II come from?
Yeah, so that article is at Wide Left. Would love for everybody to go read it. I wrote it after, I think, like week 4 last year, where he showed up. He got like 7 sacks in the first 4 weeks and out of nowhere. And he was seen as like the 4th guy on the roster. They had Jonathan Grenard and Andrew Van Ginkel, both Pro Bowlers, first rounder Dallas Turner. And Patrick Jones was just like zooming. And a lot of it is his backstory, where he grew up kind of going from military base to military base. He was born in Japan. And was like, as a military kid, had to be used to change a lot. And that sort of emotional fortitude has come in handy with the Vikings. He was drafted on a day that was sort of an infamous day in Vikings history, which was day 2 of the 2021 draft, where it has now come out that people were like leaving that room in a huff. It was not good. And everyone got fired at the end of that year. And then a new D coordinator comes in, and Ed Donatel, who runs the Fangio system. You guys are familiar with that.
Yeah.
It is a disaster defensively. He gets fired. Then Flores is in, and it's better. Pat Jones has stuck through all of that. And a lot of the reason he did so is because he's a dirty work guy. Like, he is a dedicated, do the unsexy job kind of dude. That's great as a rotational player. And some of the sacks that he got last year were not as the featured guy, right? As somebody, well, you're kind of just supposed to contain, but then he just beats Trent Williams in the contain rush and just gets to the quarterback. Okay, that works. All right. That wasn't the plan, but we take those. So he had these flashes of just putting a good pass rush move on somebody, and just now having been in the league for a few years, having just enough polish to punish a mistake or punish a guy who's maybe not as fast as he used to be. But he never had in Minnesota the opportunity to be like the dude. It was always, you're going to contain. You're going to be the guy kind of, crashing the puller on the backside or on the front side of a run or something like that, or crashing the tight end on the backside of split zone or something like that. And that's never a problem, but he was never going to be the featured guy in Minnesota, which is why Minnesota didn't re-sign him, because Pat Jones knew that the season that he had could get him an opportunity like the one it looks like he's going to be able to have in Carolina, and the money that comes with that.
Yeah, 2 years, 15 mil, 20 million based off of incentives. And I will be curious to see how things pan out for him as far as what his role is going to be. Of course, Carolina on day 2, they went out there and took Nick Scourton from A&M in the second round, and then also got Princely Umanmielen from Ole Miss. Both of those guys actually traded up for there in the second and third rounds respectively. And since then have parted ways with Jadeveon Clowney, who I felt like more of a name than an actual difference maker at this point in time in his career. But that has now opened up an opportunity for Pat Jones, for the aforementioned rookies as well. DJ Wonnum, a former Viking, also here in Carolina. And if healthy, I do think can be maybe the top guy. We'll see how that plays out. But I'm curious because I look at the game log from a year ago, and you wrote that article after week 4. We had 5 sacks at that point in time. Had 2 week 1 against the Giants, 2 week 2 against the 49ers, had 1 against Green Bay on the road, and then you had to wait all the way until week 10 for him to have the final 2 sacks of his season, getting up to 7 there at Tennessee in that win. So he had the early outbursts, kind of went away, came back. How much do you think of his big season, at least his career year, sack total wise, was attributed to having guys like Van Ginkel and having guys like John Gennard? Because I don't see those level of players, at least proven talent in Carolina right now.
Well, that's the thing. Like, it's not like this is going to be a name that probably means nothing to Panthers fans, but it's not a Ray Edwards situation, which Vikings fans know that was Jared Allen, Pat Williams, Kevin Williams was the 3 of the front 4 in the 2009 Vikings that went to the NFC Championship, and Ray Edwards got a ton of sacks because everybody was just doubling him. I don't think that was the case. The pass rushes of the Vikings were designed to give that sort of easy, clean one-on-one opportunity to Grenard or Van Ginkel or whoever was out there, and used Pat Jones as a sacrificial lamb and said, you are going to take on their best. He basically went up against the best tackles in the league that first stretch, right? That was Andrew Thomas, Trent Williams, Laramie Tunsil. Like that, it was a murderer's row of tackles in that stretch where he got hot, which is what was cool, with no help, no two-way go, which means he wasn't, the pass rush had some stunts going on a lot of the time, which means you're not allowed to cut inside. You'll get in the way of the stunt. You have to rush to the outside. You can't even so much as fake to the inside. So suddenly half your pass rush repertoire that involves a jab step inside to do some outside move doesn't even work. So you're in this sort of like crammed, this sort of hamstrung position, and you're going against one of the GOATs and you're winning that rep. That was what was super impressive. He disappeared. He got hurt, which was part of it. And also his snap count then never really was the same when he came back from injury because the rookie was starting to come on. So Dallas Turner took some more of that. And there just wasn't room, there just weren't snaps to go around. But Flores also like rotates everybody. Like bona fide starters still will only play like 70% of the snaps, just the way Flores does it. So there was still some, but that's when it sort of dried up. But for me, what Pat Jones has been from scheme to scheme to scheme to scheme here in Minnesota has been, I think the thing he does best is set the edge, which is huge. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Is, like fold in a tackle on the front side of zone or something like that. Be strong, be powerful, be difficult to move. He is not the kind of guy that I would expect to be like knife in, penetrate, get in, make a bunch of productive plays, but he's going to do stuff that super matters. It super matters. It just isn't going to show up on the stat sheet like it did last year, where it happened to turn into sacks because he got a couple of good wins in disadvantageous positions. I don't know if you're going to be able to keep that up. Yeah. But I don't think that needs to be the ask. He is that dirty work, that role playing, and you mentioned Nick Scourton too, very similar to what Nick Scourton did at A&M, where he was always supposed to rush that upfield shoulder of the quarterback, which meant if the quarterback steps up, you're never getting the sack. But if the quarterback steps up, now Shamar Turner's getting the sack or Shamar Stewart's getting the sack, and we get it. It's a team game, so you got team players. And who'd you say was going to be the number one? Maybe was it?
I would think Wonnum at this point in time would probably be, just because of he's the returning statesman and what they paid him last year. So
Yeah, that's wild. I was never a big fan of him.
Well, I'm curious because you bring that up, like, because clearly you seem to be a big fan of Pat Jones. Now you are certainly transparent in like what his role was and what kind of player he actually is and like what should be asked of him. Like you look at those two guys, like you were more of a fan of Pat Jones and like DJ Wonnum because like when he was signed last year, that was the first signing Carolina made post trading away Brian Burns, a move that I hated and then to this point in time right now still don't necessarily love, even if it opened up some cap space. They have not found anyone who right now is going to replace him on this roster. Maybe down the road, Scourton can be that, but right now they don't have a replacement. So I'm curious, like just looking at the Wonnum thing and Pat Jones, kind of like your thoughts over both those guys.
Well, I guess I would answer it with a question back. Is it what is this a 4-man rush and try to get home kind of very Fangio offshoot situation, or is it Fangio himself who likes to blitz? Because he's the only one that blitzes, and then everybody else gets fired.
Jeromero blitzed a decent amount last year.
Okay,
but I think a lot of that's just kind of simulating pressure because like they don't have a guy, like they don't have a dude. Like
okay,
if
so
you're looking at it right now, like this is you got. I mean, okay, DJ Wonnum, Pat Jones a second. Nick Scourton, Princely Umanmielen. Like those are the top 4 edge rushers in Carolina. You are in Minnesota, and I'm guessing you're thinking, wow, that's not good. Like that, there's 2 unproven guys who are talented. And then
unproven. I like Scourton a lot. I actually think he could emerge, and by week 3, he is your guy.
Oh no, I believe the same way. But I just look at right now what I'm going off of, and if I'm anybody around the league, I'm like, yeah, I'm not concerned about Carolina's pass rush. At least from those 4 guys, no.
Yeah. Okay. Let me sell you a vision. Knowing the 2 guys that I know, and let's say not relying on the young guys. So knowing the 2 guys that I know, Pat Jones can absolutely be the sacrificial lamb to set up that nice, advantageous either one-on-one or even, I mean, a lot of DJ Wonnum's production in Minnesota was straight up unblocked, was just Chicago screwing up protections because or Justin Fields running into his lap.
Yeah.
But setting up those easy, advantageous positions is like what Wonnum needs and what Patrick Jones does. So the pairing kind of makes sense, but yeah, Wonnum would be the guy, the featured guy that you're trying to actually get into the backfield. And what he's really good at is pursuing. Yeah. And chasing something down, and he's fast and it's stringing out a run and sort of cutting off that backside or whatever. So if I'm Carolina, I would love to see Pat Jones on the front side of a play trying to collapse it, and then DJ Wonnum on the back side of a play trying to chase it down. Like that pairing makes sense to me. And then hopefully Nick Scourton can come in and be like that dude. But like, yeah, if you're walking into a game with the Panthers, I don't think you're looking at that and like fearing pressure off of the edge.
No, and I think right now, like the idea would probably be like Jones and Scourton doing the dirty work, and like really Scourton being that 3-down kind of guy. And then depending on like the situation, like that's when Wonnum is coming in because he's not really known to be someone who's going to help stop the run. Certainly, Princely Umanmielen's going to have a long way to go. Yeah, like that's I think they wanted to have a cheaper version of Clowney. But maybe there's some upside there. It's certainly a lot younger. I think he's like about 5-6 years younger than Clowney is right now. But I'm interested to see because you have sold me a vision that I have not been sold before. I did reach out to another buddy who covers the Vikings and asked about Pat Jones, and he's just said to me, JAG, just a guy. So that doesn't really get you excited when someone calls somebody a jag.
It's fair. Yeah. I mean, I'm trying to be more detailed with you, but
sure.
Yeah, he is a dude in your depth chart. I don't think that he comes in and becomes like the dude, right? But hey, he had a career year last year. Maybe that continues. Maybe he grows. What do we all know, right? We're just podcasters.
Exactly. We're all guessing and hoping for some fun things to talk about. And certainly that could be the case of Pat Jones second coming up here in Carolina this season. But Luke Braun does a fantastic job, as you just heard there on Locked On Vikings. Check him out as they're going to go with the second-year guy. Looks like JJ McCarthy. Hopefully that works out for them. Certainly no. Well, when the big games happen, he doesn't shrivel up like Sam Darnold did in the past. So best of luck to you guys this season, and appreciate you coming on here as always, Luke. Check him out on YouTube and wherever you listen to your podcast. But let's take a quick pause, come back here, and we'll talk more about the impact that Rico Dowdle and Patrick Jones II can have in Carolina this season. All right, thanks to Marcus Mosher and Luke Braun there for breaking down Rico Dowdle and breaking down Patrick Jones' second. And again, wanted to circle back on a couple of these free agency moves the Panthers made back in March. Didn't spend a ton of time talk about those guys because we did. And free agency happened that Monday. And then by Tuesday, it was pretty much dried up as far as the kind of players you're going to sign. And Carolina signed all the guys that they really wanted to come in and start for them right away on that Monday. So it was gone and done with immediately throughout that first week. And we, as you know, we shifted right to the draft and didn't really talk too much, at least speaking to people who have covered some of the guys that have signed here this offseason. So wanted to do that today and tomorrow. And again, hoping to also address some of the Rams players the Panthers signed, like Bobby Brown III, Christian Roseboom, AC Carter, who's actually a coach now here. He's in here. And then Ajero Vero, we were told by a person, that name being Jordan Rodriguez, how he was going to be solid here. And we talked, and she still believes. So hopefully you can get her on at some point in June. Just did not work out schedule-wise, so kind of had to figure out Monday and Tuesday on the show with the whole depth chart thing. But what Luke said there about Pat Jones had me a little excited because, again, I had talked to another friend who covers the Vikings. He had told me he's just a guy, a solid player, but, not anybody's going to come out there and really wow you. And to hear that you can do some of the dirty work, and that's the thing. When you hear about Dave Canales being asked about Bryce Young, and when he was willing to answer, he talked about all we need is Bryce to do is 1/11th. It's a team game. And that is what he's talking about. A quarterback, obviously, the emphasis on the quarterback position is massive. And what they need out of a quarterback is pretty big. But also just do your job. Don't try to do too much. And when listening to Luke, he talked about there were times where Patrick Jones, all you need to do is just rush on the outside. Don't come inside. Do your job. And sometimes that leads to him getting a sack. And also talk about setting the edge, being able to stop the run there. He's coming in to kind of do the stuff that Clowney did, but not for the same amount of money, and certainly not with the same kind of fanfare with the name and the number one overall pick billing that Jadeveon Clowney brought last offseason here in Carolina. But somebody who can just be an early down kind of edge rusher. And if you want him out there and you can potentially pair him with DJ Wonnum, which I found to be very interesting there, is that proposition that Luke laid out. That could work out for Carolina. I do look at the way this room is constituted right now, that there are 4 players that are going to primarily get the bulk of the snaps at edge. It's going to be DJ Wonnum. It's going to be Patrick Jones second. It's going to be, of course, Nick Scourton and Princely Umanmielen. I agree with Luke that as the year goes on, the hope would be that Scourton can end up being your number one guy. I just look at what they have on the roster right now and just pass rush ability and proven ability at the NFL level. DJ Wonnum would be that man, even if there are still some areas of his game that are lacking. So I don't look at this as the most imposing edge rusher group, but you got 2 young guys. You got 2 other guys who are still younger in their second contracts who you can try to build around and try to develop, and then see how all that goes over the course of the next couple of years. Wonnum last year of his deal, I believe. I think it was only a 2-year deal he signed last season. So we'll see if they want to keep him around moving forward. But Pat Jones, 2-year deal. Of course, Scourton, Umanmielen, both on rookie deals at this moment in time. So it's just going to be a group that we're going to monitor and hope for the best as far as their development. But that's still kind of TBD, big question mark. And I wouldn't rate it as one of the best in the NFL. I certainly wouldn't put it in the top half. So we'll see how it plays out. And as far as Rico Dowdle goes, he didn't get the kind of money he wanted. Dallas clearly didn't evaluate him to the point where they thought he was worthy of bringing back. And they ended up with a guy who was a backup in Carolina last year, and Miles Sanders, who did not have good seasons here the 2 years he was in Carolina. And then you look at Javonte Williams, was solid early on in his career at Denver, but at the end of it wasn't really their guy. So Dallas certainly, I think they got worse at running back, especially if you're looking at what they had last year, Rico Dowdle, and now what Carolina gets, they have upgraded. As long as Rico stays healthy, Chuba continues to be that top back. You see what you get out of Trevor Etienne or Raheem Blackshear. This is a good situation as far as the backfield goes. And I'm looking just across the NFL. And I wanted to ask Marcus this just as someone who is not in here covering this team every day, but also does a really good job of looking at the rest of the league. And he brought up the success rate numbers. And I brought that up time and time again last year when looking at the season that Chuba was having And to hear that also Rico Dowdle was up there as far as one of the top guys in rushing success rate at that running back position. And both of them are now here, still young, still not having a ton of wear and tear, at least at the NFL level, on their bodies at that running back position. And y'all know how I feel about running backs. Who has a better running back room right now than the Panthers? I'm sure there's somebody, but please, like, I want to know, like, Detroit, they're definitely with Montgomery and then with Jahmyr Gibbs, probably the best in the NFL. Philadelphia, just by having Saquon Barkley, is up there. So I just want to know how many other teams have a better running back situation. Maybe Atlanta with Bijan Robinson, Tyler Algier, whatever his last name is. There aren't a lot. So I like the situation you got here in Carolina as far as that running back room goes. So Rico Dowdle, Pat Jones, second, both coming over in free agency to try to help Carolina get over the top here in the NFC South in 2025. But that's going to wrap up this edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, hosted by yours truly, Julian Council. Again, y'all subscribe or follow the show for free over on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. And be sure to follow me, Julian Council, over on Twitter and Blue Sky at Julian Council. Where on Friday, I'm back answering your weekly Friday mailbag questions. Get those into me right now as I'm recording later on today on Wednesday. In the meantime, be safe, be happy, be whole as always. Keep pounding. And I'll talk to y'all on Thursday as we'll break down Turk Wharton and also the additions of Trevon Merrick and Hunter Renfrow to Carolina here on Thursday on Locked On Panthers.